Hi, I'm Julie Marie, the creator of The Protective Diet, and I'm so excited to show you this technique video to help you make my sweet and sour tofu stir fry. First thing we're going to start off with is a box of extra firm tofu. When you get it home from the store, I want you to pop it in the freezer, allow it to freeze 24 hours or longer, and then take it out and allow it to defrost. Now that it's defrosted, I'm going to cut open my package. And many of you have asked me if you use this liquid that comes with the tofu. We never use this liquid. This is a preserving liquid. We never use it in any Protective Diet recipes. So now you can see the tofu has a spongy texture, and we're going to press all this liquid out. That spongy texture comes from freezing it and defrosting it. This is very desired in Asian style tofu stir fries or deep fried tofu in a stir fry. If you've ever had that, it's delicious, and that's what we're imitating with this stir fry. So I'm using my Easy Tofu Press. You could wrap your brick of tofu in a clean kitchen towel and press it like this between two kitchen plates and put a heavy book or a pot on top of it to press out the moisture. I would recommend changing the towel once after about an hour to get all the extra moisture out. Now with the tofu press, it makes it really quick. We can press a brick of tofu like this in about 15 minutes, the time it'll take us to chop up all our veggies for our stir fry. Okay, you can see I've pressed this down pretty thin, and I'm just going to rest this on a plate and allow it to drain off. Next, I'm going to prepare all my veggies for the stir fry. Okay, as you can see, our tofu is nice and pressed. All the liquid is drained out of it. And we're going to cut this into two cuts long ways and 3 cuts or 4 cuts into nice big cubes about this size. The smaller the cube, the more work it's going to be when browning. So I like to keep them nice sized cubes like this. And I'm going to take them over and start browning them. Okay, we're going to just place these in the pan. Spread them out a little, and I'm going to, this is a stainless steel pan without any oil or liquid in the pan. We want it totally dry. I'm going to turn this on about medium-high heat and just allow it to brown. And I also chopped up some green onions to add to this dish. You could add pea pods or anything green that you want to this dish. I added green onions, and I chopped them in big pieces because this stir fry is traditionally it's made with just bell peppers, green onions, and traditional white onions. And it's in big pieces and with the pineapple chunks. So we're going for the same size of all the pieces in our stir fry. Makes it really nice. Okay, I can smell them browning, so I know they're starting to get there. They're really stuck down to the bottom of the pan, and you can, some of them flip up on their own. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. up will release the tofu from the bottom of the pan. You can just flip them over. Some are a little darker than others. Hot spots in the pan will cause that. But this golden color that you're seeing here, this is what gives the dish all the flavor. It's what gives the tofu the flavor. It's not the oil that we brown with. Sometimes they'll stick a little bit on the bottom of the pan, no big deal. So you lose a little piece, but if they're sticking really firm, add more broth and turn the heat down, and it's going to release them from the bottom of the pan. So we're going to brown 2 sides of this tofu, and we're going to let this heat up again and evaporate the broth that we added to the pan to brown the other side. So be patient. It takes a little bit longer on the second side because of the broth in the pan. As soon as that evaporates, it'll start to brown, so keep a close eye on it. If you're getting nervous about it burning or getting too dark, turn it down a little. The lower heat will just take longer for the browning process, but it won't get away from you as quickly and burn. Okay, this side of the tofu is now nicely browned. I'm going to turn off my heat and add the broth to release from the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to remove my tofu and plate it up. You can see how easily this slides off the bottom of the pan when you add the liquid. There might be a couple little bits that stick, but as long as your tofu cubes are staying in a nice form, they're great. So this technique is very similar to the browning onions without oil, which we're going to do next. First, I'm going to take my pan and wash it out and start fresh with the stir fry. Okay, we have a clean pan and I'm adding the onions. I'm going to turn the heat on to about medium-high. Spread these out and allow these to brown in a dry pan. Okay, you can see the onions are getting a nice golden color to them. You can see there's browning on the bottom of the pan, and that's a good thing. We're going to get that to release when we add a liquid to the pan. The onions aren't cooked all the way through, and that's fine, just as long as they have some color to them to add flavor to the dish. We're going to give this dish a few minutes to simmer to get them to cook through, along with the peppers and the green onions. So I'm going to add my bell peppers and my green onions. And this is going to cool the pan down a little bit and stop some of the browning. If the pan starts to get if the onions started to get too brown, turn it down. Or remove it from the heat completely to cool off your pan. You have the control over your heat. If you're working with an electric stove, take the pan off the burner, move it. Or if you're working with a gas stove and it's starting to get really it's starting to burn really bad, just take it off. Turn off the heat. The more and more you practice this dry browning technique that I've shown you, the better you're going to get at it, and it's going to be really easy for you, and you're not going to have burned pans. Now if you end up with a stainless steel pan that gets burned, just use a little steel wool and some soap on it, and that'll release any burned bits. But that only happens when you do this the first time or so until you get accustomed to it. So practice with just some onions when you're not making a full dinner and get a better idea of how to handle it. So we're going to add our sauce to this dish. The sweet and sour sauce recipe is completely sugar, oil free. You can find that recipe. It's a Protective Diet Education recipe. It's on ProtectiveDiet.com with subscription to Protective Diet Education. If you're not familiar with Protective Diet Education, check it out. There's a video about it. Join our support group on Facebook called Protective Diet Living. It's a great support group. And everyone on there is practicing, majority of people on there are practicing a protective diet, and they'll tell you all about protective diet education and how great it is. So we're going to add the pineapple. And I'm going to bring this heat back up. We're going to heat this sauce back up to thicken it. This is our starch slurry. I'm just going to mix this up a little bit and add it to the pan. And once this comes to a boil, it's going to thicken the sauce really nice and make it shiny. Okay, the sauce is nice and thick now and it's getting shiny. I'm going to turn it down to low, and I'm going to add my tofu back into the dish. And I'm adding the tofu at the end just so it doesn't break up. I want it to go into the sauce, pick up some of the flavor of the sauce, but I don't want it to crumble up. It's pretty firm and sturdy with the freezing technique and the pressing of the tofu. Gives it a sturdier consistency. So I'm just going to coat the tofu with the sauce. And I'm going to cover it and let it simmer until the veggies get nice and tender. Okay, our stir fry has been simmering on medium-low for about 10 minutes. Our bell peppers and veggies are tender but firm. Just going to give this a little stir. I also want to mention, if you're not a fan of tofu, you can completely leave this out of this dish. Also, if you're intimidated by the browning technique, you're not ready to do that yet, and you're still practicing how to brown onions without oil, you can cube tofu up and just add it to the end of the dish unbrowned. Now the browning of the tofu and the browning of the onions is going to add a lot of flavor to this dish. So I suggest you try it. Start with a low heat so that it doesn't get away and burn. Practice. Practice makes perfect. So I'm going to serve some of this up. I have a bed of brown rice that I cooked in my Secura pressure cooker. You could use a rice cooker or cook it on the stove top. Make sure you get a couple pieces of tofu per serving. I always use chopsticks to pace myself because this stir fry is so good. This blows away any sweet and sour tofu stir fry at your local Chinese place. This one is totally sugar-free and oil-free. Jerry's been waiting. Be sure to enroll in Protective Diet Education to get more recipes like this and start eating your way to a slimmer, healthier you. Take care and best of health to you.